Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing. The New York Giants lost last night. Is anybody surprised? Probably not. Are they surprised by the way that we lost? Maybe in some ways. I mean, the Giants defense was excellent against a really good Cincinnati Bengals offense, but at the end of the day, Daniel Jones on primetime. That's really what it boiled down to.
Yeah, that's exactly what it boiled down to. Unfortunately, we'll get into that. Today has the chance to either be a great day or my 13th reason today with the Mets and Jets in action. So, I'm nervous for today. We'll get into the Jets in the second half of the show, but let's start with the Giants, who fall 17-7 at home to the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, I think we start here. You got to be pretty happy with how the defense performed in this one, holding the Bengals, who were putting up 30 points every week, to just 17.
Yeah, I mean, they were averaging 29 points per game going into this contest. The Giants held them to under 20. I don't know what more you could ask for from this Giants defense. Listen, that first touchdown that they gave up, the Joe Burrow 47-yard rushing touchdown, yeah, that was ugly. That's the last thing you ever want to see. That was a terrible play call to be in man coverage on 3rd and 18. Obviously, you're running into trouble there. Should have dropped back in zone, let him throw it short, tackle him short of the sticks. Yeah, but that is the one mistake that the Giants defense made. Other than that, they were nearly perfect throughout the rest of the game. When you've got a defense playing that well for 4 quarters and you still lose because you can't throw a single passing touchdown, it's pretty easy to find who the problem is with this team, where the problem starts and ends, because right now, this Giants defense is looking like one of the best in the NFL with one of the best defensive lines in the league, and still somehow they're not able to catch a win.
No, I mean, you mentioned it on one of the recent episodes about Dexter Lawrence being in the Defensive Player of the Year conversations, and had another really stellar performance, had a sack, had a tackle for a loss. You know, unfortunately, we saw an injury to Aiden Hutchinson, who I think was, up there with him. But with that injury, I do think that, that claim is very valid. I think there's a good chance this guy ends up winning Defensive Player of the Year with how he's been playing and with how this Giants defense has looked. And it's just got to be so frustrating where you have a game where your defense, allows less than 20 points against a potent offense, 17 points allowed. You had that one misstep, but you feel like there's no wiggle room for error, because if you make that one mistake, which, was the long touchdown, and as you mentioned, like, probably should have been in zone there, keep everything underneath. They let up a long run to Joe Burrow, who, like, that's not his game at all. He's a pocket passer, and for him to tuck it and run for, a long touchdown was not something any of us were expecting. But for most of it was 7-0 for most of this game, it felt like, and they just could not find a way to get in the end zone. And I mean, it was something that you mentioned on our episode at the end of last week. Like, yeah, I'm, happy the Giants had this big win, and yeah, the Bengals haven't looked good, but Daniel Jones in primetime is inevitable. And you got your classic Daniel Jones in primetime. He was 20. Here, I'll pull up the numbers: 22 of 41, 205 yards, 5 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, 1 pick, 57.5 passer rating, and 18.2 QBR. That interception was just absolutely abysmal. Like, why is he throwing that ball up for grabs in that spot? I don't get, either take the sack or throw it out of bounds. Like, why are you throwing it up for grabs in the middle of the field?
I mean, it was just terrible, but it's what we're accustomed to with Daniel Jones, especially in these primetime games at home. These are the mistakes that he seems to make more often in those situations than he does, say, on the road at 1 p.m. Doesn't throw those passes for some reason, but home at primetime, you can expect at least one of those. And that was a terrible play. It's in the red zone as well. So at the very least, he could have just taken a sack and taken 3 points. That's at the minimum. But when you throw it up like that into triple coverage, it's an easy interception. And that ultimately kind of lost the Giants the game because of the momentum shift, the fact that the Giants then had to go for 4th down throughout the rest of the game because they didn't have those 3 points at the minimum. So listen, it's what you expect from Daniel Jones, but what I said in the last episode on Thursday is I'm very excited about the fact that the Giants won against the Seahawks. I was feeling really good. I was impressed, and I admitted, hey, Daniel Jones over the last 3 weeks, yeah, his stat lines look good. He was performing at a much better level. 3 games with 2+ touchdown passes. I mean, when was the last time he did that? It was a great stretch of football from him. But I also said, Matt, I will not buy in and I will not believe unless he does it on primetime. Because he has that 1-13 primetime record. Well, now it's 1-14, and he has a 12-20 career touchdown to interception ratio in primetime. He has not thrown, this is an unfathomable stat. He has not thrown a touchdown pass on primetime in 7 straight starts. How is that even possible? Doesn't make sense to me. Classic primetime Daniel Jones is what we saw last night. And I'm hearkening back to the legend, Bill Parcells, Hall of Fame head coach, New York Giants. You are what your record says you are. Daniel Jones's primetime record says that he is not a true winning quarterback.
No, I think that's, becoming pretty obvious. The 7 straight primetime games without a touchdown pass is really incredible. I saw another one too, and I know he got hurt last year and they've only had 3 home games, but he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass at home since 2022. Like that's also an absurd number too when you think of it. It's frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating. And listen, there was a lot of crucial mistakes made throughout this game, but at the end of the day, there were some decisive moments. If the Giants convert one of those 4th downs, like if Daniel Jones just doesn't stare down Darius Slayton, gets to his second read and throws it to Wandale, boom, they move the sticks. They're back in field goal range, probably have a chance to score. Wandale, great after the catch, might have scored a touchdown on that 4th and 5 if he got the ball in his hands. So, there were a few moments where if there was a different quarterback in the lineup, I think those plays get made and the Giants end up winning that game. And I hate to say this, it really pains me to say, but there's a quarterback on the New York Jets roster right now who was with the Giants last year by the name of Tyrod Taylor. If Tyrod Taylor was starting all 6 of these games so far this season for the Giants, they might be 4-2, maybe even 5-1.
Yeah, that's not crazy at all. He's not turning the ball over in that spot. Like Tyrod's not a flawless quarterback, but he's gonna manage the game and not have a brutal turnover. Shout out to Ian who sends in a super chat. I agree the Giants blow, but I thought the margin for error was wide last night. Interception, turnover on downs, 0 first half points, bad run blocking, had many chances in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, I saw that you commented something similar on my Twitter yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to respond to it. Appreciate the super chat here, and I think it's a good time for me to respond and say, you can have that perspective. There's multiple ways to kind of slice an apple, basically. There's different ways to look at this game. My way of looking at it was, yeah, the margin for error was wide. They made a lot of those mistakes. You're right. Interception, turnover on downs, 0 first half points, bad run blocking, had many chances. You're right. There were a lot of opportunities. But my point being, the Giants made one mistake defensively that the offense couldn't overcome, right? Like that's the margin for error. The Giants defense cannot afford to make a single slight mistake. Otherwise, the Giants offense will not be able to recover at any point in the game. And that's what we've seen all season long. Just a very thin margin for error where this defense has to be flawless, where you can't drop a single pass because if you are in 3rd and long situations, your drive is pretty much killed if you're this New York Giants offense. Or, you can't take a sack because then the drive is just over. That's what I mean when I say thin margin for error, where this team, once they make one mistake per drive, that drive is done. They cannot recover from it.
Yeah, it does feel like that one thing, they just can't overcome it, whether it's a sack or a penalty, just these absolutely drive killing things. Dano's in here, Jets fan, but says the Giants need Malik back. It's obvious. He's been a monster during his rookie season, not surprising at all. The success that he's had so far early on, and they were able to win without him last week. Unfortunately, this past week, offense just could not get anything going. Darius Slayton, the leading receiver, with 6 catches for 57 yards. He was targeted 11 times. Same with Wandale. Wandale was also targeted 11 times in this game.
Yeah, Wandale actually leads the NFL in targets right now with 58 total. And here's a fun stat to kind of back up your claim of the Giants need Malik Neighbors back. They absolutely do. He still ranks 9th in the NFL with 52 total targets, and he hasn't played in 2 weeks. So if that doesn't highlight how important he is to this team. I mean, entering week 6, he still led the NFL in targets after not playing in week 5. So think about the importance that he has in this offense. The New York Giants are desperately in need of their number one wide receiver. I'm hoping that he's healthy enough to play next week against the Eagles. I think that would be really fun to watch him score against Philly. I think he has a great chance of doing that as well because they don't really have a great secondary in my eyes. But listen, whether Malik Neighbors is in the lineup or not, last week we saw the Giants put up a win, put up some receiving touchdowns, and move the ball just fine without Malik Neighbors. You can't just put all of your hope and faith into one single player. You got to find other ways to come out with a win. That's what good quarterbacks do. But right now, the New York Giants simply just don't have a good quarterback, at least not on a week-to-week basis. So, and yeah, my fantasy teams, not just team, but teams desperately need Malik Neighbors back in the lineup.
I have him in one of my leagues as well, and I am about to drop to 0-2 without him. I've started 4-0 and have lost the last 2 weeks, which is obviously not ideal. I very much so miss him. Ian follows it up pretty much in agreement with you. That's fair. But if you can't overcome one possession, then we need to change at quarterback, and I think you agree with that.
I do agree with that. And this is what I've been saying. I said it all offseason on Fireside Giants and on Big Apple Blitz. This was my favorite quote. It's no longer good enough for Daniel Jones to be good enough. I think what we've seen through the first 6 weeks is we've seen him be good enough to win a couple of games, right? We've seen him play good enough to keep the Giants competitive in a lot of these games. It's been good enough football. He's good enough to remain the starter. But to me, that's not good enough anymore. He needs to be great. Otherwise, why risk the extra $20 million and an injury guarantee that he has in his contract? He doesn't slide. Anytime he runs the ball, he runs head first in the contact. All it takes is one more hit to his neck, and again, he's done for the year. Or one wrong turn, and he tears his knee again, done for the year. And the Giants are now on the hook for an additional $20 million in salary cap space that, let's face it, with some of the holes on this team, they desperately need that money next offseason. So, yeah, a change at quarterback is necessary. I think that it's going to happen sooner or later. I'm not sure how long it takes, but again, Jones is playing good enough to remain the starter. That doesn't mean he should be the starter. In fact, I think that means he should not be the starter. Let's turn it over to QB1 of Big Apple Blitz, Tommy DeVito, or at least give Drew Lock a chance. One of those guys will at least be able to hit a 20-plus yard pass. I can promise you that right now. This New York Giants offense will not find any type of sustainability or consistency as long as Daniel Jones remains the starter.
Yeah, first state Jets is so right with this. He says Big Apple Blitz could literally do an entire show about amazingly, unbelievably depressing quarterback stats that are somehow true about both the Jets and the Giants. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And he's right. He's spot on. The Daniel Jones ones are unthinkable. And, luckily this year, the Jets have had Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't played like Aaron Rodgers through 5 games. But, I mean, the Jets as a team last year had 11 passing touchdowns in a 17-game season, which that alone is just, how does this happen?
I don't see how it happens, but somehow it does. Like, I actually can't ever fathom any of the stats that I see on Daniel Jones, even the Aaron Rodgers, no 300-yard passing streak. Like, there's so much that you can tie in here to this conversation about quarterback play for the Giants and the Jets. But, listen, it's been 6 years. If the Giants are still going to keep lying to themselves and playing around with themselves and pretending that they have a franchise quarterback, I mean, I just don't know what to say. Listen, at least this offseason, they tried their best. They really wanted Jaden Daniels. He's now an MVP candidate. They really wanted Drake May. He threw a bomb yesterday. Didn't play great by any means, but still, considering the environment and situation that he's playing in, I think he did the best he could. Looked decent enough. Made more plays than Daniel Jones did with that freaking terrible Patriots offense. I mean, listen, if you can't find the answer here to what the Giants' problem is, you can't find the solution either, then you are just blindly loyal and have blind faith to a quarterback. And that's one thing that I just said on the episode of Fireside Giants I just recorded, which will go live soon. And something that I said on social media yesterday, Matt, somebody texted me on social media or commented on one of my posts and said, you should have support in Daniel Jones every single week through thick and thin. You're not a fan if that's not the case. And I said, I'm not a fan of Daniel Jones. I'm a fan of the New York Giants. I'm a fan of that blue helmet, red stripe down the middle, NY on the side. That's who I support through thick and thin, not Daniel Jones. If he's playing poorly, I will call him out for it. And I want the next quarterback, because there's always somebody behind that player wearing the exact same helmet who's ready to play. I want that person in the lineup to give us a chance to win, because I don't give a shit about Daniel Jones, his feelings, and his performances. I care about how many wins the New York Giants get. Yep, Dane says it, the name on the front, not the name on the back of the jersey, the NY on the front. That's all that I care about. So supporting this team through thick and thin, absolutely. But being blindly loyal to the quarterback just because he wears that NY, absolutely not. I'm only blindly loyal to that NY.
No, exactly. And that's how it should be, by the way. It's, same thing that Jet fans went through last year with Zach Wilson and Zach Wilson's bench and for years. But people don't like to have the uncomfortable conversation about the quarterback. They want to cling on to any hope possible about, this guy. And he won a playoff game 2 years ago and there were signs of growth in the situation and on and on and on it goes. I get it. But at the same time, too, like, as you rightfully pointed out, it's about the team. And if the team is not performing well, if it's been the same issues year over year, if this was game 3 of Daniel Jones's career, completely different story. I'd say probably premature, like let's pump the brakes on it. That's not the case. He started for 6 years for this team, and it's the same issues over and over and over again. On the issue front, there's a name that I wanted to ask you about because I'm not sure what's going on here, but what's going on with Jalen Hyatt? Clearly not on the same page with the quarterback. Is there, do you just blame it on that? Like not on the same page with Jones, or is there concern with the player too?
I actually don't just blame it on that. It's part of the problem. Him and Daniel Jones have not really been on the same page at all, other than versus the Arizona Cardinals for one half. They made a couple plays together last year. But the overwhelming majority of Jalen Hyatt's production last season as a rookie came from Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. He was hitting some really great deep passes, putting them right in the basket for Jalen Hyatt, and Hyatt was making some plays. This year, with a quarterback who really struggles to throw the ball 20 plus yards downfield, I don't know how you get Hyatt involved. And that also highlights the problems with Jalen Hyatt, right? It's not just the quarterback because, man, Hyatt just doesn't really run NFL level routes, in my opinion. He can run very fast on a straight line. But when you're running really fast on a straight line in college, it's a little different than when you're going up against all of the best college players on one football field. Even if we're talking about a scrub in the NFL, like this guy is no good, he gets burned every single week, he still probably was the best player on his college team. So Jalen Hyatt running that fast 40-yard dash and running straight, it's not enough at the NFL level to just be fast. You still have to be technically sound and have some skills, some ball skills, some body control, all of that. Jalen Hyatt just doesn't have those other elements. I don't know if he's going to get them. He probably needs more time and more reps, which is the big thing. He needs to be on the field more and get more targets. But right now, it's just tough to give him those targets, worthwhile targets, especially with Daniel Jones at quarterback. So I think it's both. It's a problem with both of those players. And at the end of the day, I don't know if that problem gets solved for Hyatt until he cleans up some things in his route running and until he gets a quarterback that can hit him a little bit more accurately and consistently.
Yeah, I agree, especially with, how Daniel Jones has played. Like, there's a reason why Wandale feels like he has double-digit targets every week is because he's very good in the underneath game and is kind of like a safety valve in this offense. And you're like Hyatt just doesn't. I don't think he has the route tree yet, and maybe it's something that he can develop over time. But even if that's not the case, like there's still some value in having a deep threat on your roster. But if you don't have the quarterback who can get him the ball, then it's kind of like he's going to be running cardio for however many plays a game, and he's not going to really be involved. Did have the one catch for 6 yards, but like I don't know. He's someone who's in the best offense should be someone who stretches the field. Like if he was playing with either the opposing quarterback in Joe Burrow or with the Kansas City Chiefs, like I could see him having success there, but with the current state of the Giants offense just doesn't really seem to fit what he's doing.
That's exactly right. And listen, I hope that one day this New York Giants offense is able to get more vertical and get some of these guys involved. Hyatt and, hey, even Theo Johnson, the rookie tight end out of Penn State. I've had this conversation a few times with Alex over on Fireside Giants where, we discussed Theo Johnson. Is he an NFL-ready talent? Is he able to make plays? He had 3 catches for 30 yards yesterday, which was a really solid game for him statistically. But what I've been arguing with Theo Johnson is he's actually been making a really significant impact on the offense every single week. It's just one that doesn't show up in the box score. His vertical ability and ability to stretch the field, he has a lot of speed when he runs those routes up the seam into the second level. If you actually watch the film on this Giants offense, he's been clearing out a lot of space for other receivers. He hasn't really been running real routes. And Hyatt did the same thing yesterday. I saw Giants fans commenting about how Hyatt was open on one of those 4th downs. And I was like, well, Not really. He was just running a straight line to push the safety back, and it opened up 3 guys underneath who were wide open. That's just on Daniel Jones to get the ball out on time and to the other playmakers. So Theo Johnson is, again, in that same kind of grouping with Jalen Hyatt, where this offense is handicapped in a way where the best impact that you can make is going to be off the ball. Go get your other guys open. Use your speed to push vertically. Make those safeties have to cheat 3 yards back and give that extra cushion to guys like Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton underneath. So whether that be Hyatt, Johnson, they're making plays that don't show up on the stat sheet, but then highlighting Johnson again, he's playing great football without showing up on the stat sheet, but there are other rookies who are showing up on the stat sheet. And if there's one silver lining that you take away from last night's game and from every Giants game this season, it's that this rookie draft class has absolutely saved Joe Shane's job. Yep. And maybe looks like the best one in the NFL right now, between Malik Neighbors looking like a superstar. Tyrone Tracy Jr. should end up being the starter within the next few weeks. He's that damn good. You've got Theo Johnson making those plays, like I said. Drew Phillips, I mean, through the first 3 weeks of the season, looked like defensive rookie of the year. He's been stellar. And Tyler Nubin, I think, maybe leads the Giants in tackles. He's been awesome against the run. So you are getting production from 5 rookies across the board right now. Excellent stuff. You love to see it. That is the saving grace of this Giants season. At least we know the future is bright for those young players.
Yeah, Tyler Nubin, another 9 tackles. I feel like anytime you look at a Giants box score, he's up like somewhere between 8 to 12 tackles, just always making plays and coming down, from the safety spot. Anything else from this game you wanted to touch on here before we keep it rolling to the Jets preview?
Listen, like I said, I have my love and support for every Giants player and for this team every single week. And when Daniel Jones plays well, I'll tell you guys he played well and I'll give him my support. When he plays poorly, I'm going to say, hey, he played like shit. And that's the reason the Giants lost. And that's ultimately what happened last night. The Giants just cannot sustain wins, and they can't expect to win games as long as they continue to put them out week to week, especially in those bright light primetime moments. So hopefully next week versus the Eagles, it's a different story. Malik Neighbors hopefully back in the lineup. A piece of me dies every single time the Giants lose to the Eagles. I cannot stomach another loss to that team, especially at home. So hopefully things turn around. But right now, it's a little bit tough to feel confident in this offense with Daniel Jones under center.
Can you please shut up Nick Sirianni? He might be the most insufferable human on the planet.
Nick Sirianni is a disgrace to my heritage.
I saw that tweet. That was a great tweet.
I hate that guy. I really do. Italian Americans deserve better than Nick Sirianni being the most popular Italian American head coach in the NFL.
You got to find somebody else to take that crown, because Nick Sirianni, dead man walking. Who knows? Maybe a loss to the Giants ends his. Can you take any solace in that if the Giants beat the Eagles and then he gets fired?
I mean, listen, as much of a clown as he is, and I don't like him, I think it's a good thing that he's coaching the Eagles, because he's not a good coach. So I hope I hope the Giants win next week, but I hope it doesn't result in his firing. And I'd like him to lead them to a few more losses throughout the year.
Totally fair. Totally fair. All right, let's transition, get into this Jets preview. A lot has changed for the New York Jets since the last time they played on Sunday, lost to the Minnesota Vikings, new head coach, new play caller, and a lot on the line tonight. As terrible as the Jets have looked through the first 5 games of the year, they're sitting at 2-3. If they win tonight, they're in first place in the division. So, like, put all that stuff behind you is my thought, and just find a way to beat a Buffalo team at home, which you've been able to do with a worse quarterback and worse roster over the last 2 years. They did it in 2022, and they did it last year in the wild, season opener on Monday Night Football when they lost Aaron Rodgers. Just got to find a way to win this game.
You have to find a way to win this game if you're the New York Jets. I mean, this is, I feel like, back against the wall. They made their one back against the wall move already. They fired Robert Saleh, but now your first game without him, how do you respond? Todd Downing now calling the plays. Obviously, we discussed that at length on Thursday's episode. I'm really curious to see the effect that has on the offense. Is there more motion? Is Aaron Rodgers more comfortable? Does he hit his targets? And does Breece Hall finally have one of those pop games? I'm hoping so, because I'm definitely putting him in my parlay, banking on Todd Downing to get him going. But yeah, this is, like you said, this is a game you got to have if you're the New York Jets.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Breece Hall, and I think the running game is going to play a big factor tonight. When you look at it, I mean, last year, Breece had a really big game in week 1 against the Bills. They popped off a couple big runs, but they've been very susceptible, the Bills defense, to the rushing attack. They're allowing the most yards per attempt against in the league right now, averaging 5.2 yards per attempt. some of that's inflated from the monster game that Derrick Henry had a couple weeks ago. But if there was ever a get right game for this offense and the more specifically the rushing attack offensively, feels like this is the week to do it for both Brees and Braylon Allen. Honestly, there were times early this year where Braylon Allen looked good as well. Last 2 weeks, that really hasn't been the case. The Jets' run blocking has been very poor, but they are getting Morgan Moses back at right tackle, and I'm hoping that he maybe stabilizes that offensive line a little bit. And just matchup wise, it's an area of weakness for the Bills. So they've thrown Rodgers a lot the last 2 weeks because of how poor the rushing attack is. This is one where I'm kind of just hoping that maybe it's a script where Rodgers is throwing 28 to 32 times, and they're just trying to run the ball a ton against this defense.
I hope that that's the game plan. I think it needs to be. Listen, it's not because of a lack of talent in that backfield. There is a lot of talent back there. Brees Hall is one of the best running backs in the NFL from a talent standpoint, not production this year, but we all know how talented he is. And Braylon Allen is awesome. And, you brought that up to me in the last episode, how Todd Downing has a history with the Tennessee Titans. So we know that he loves a physical running back and a physical rushing attack. I mean, Braylon Allen could end up popping in this one for a few games this season. This could really be a dual-headed monster if the Jets play their cards right in this backfield. But it's really just going to come down to a solid and sound offensive game plan that runs through that backfield. We need to see solid performances out of those guys. And like you mentioned, you had some big runs against the Bills last year. I absolutely think we could see a big Brees Hall game. If you want to talk about making life easier for Aaron Rodgers and having him bring down the number of attempts, but bring up the number of completions, I think that the ground game could play a big part in that.
Yeah, well, 1000%. And, First State Jet says if Brees doesn't show up, time to have a hard conversation about where he is right now. He hasn't looked right this year. The offensive line play, especially in the run game, has not been good enough. But Brees just, eye test wise, hasn't looked as explosive as what he did, his first 2 years in the league. And I'm hoping that, whatever it is, there's a bit of indecisiveness or whatever that could be, ironed out this week in a game against Buffalo. But this is like a clear opportunity to me. Like the last week against Minnesota, they have a great, rushing defense rather. And then the week prior against Denver, that's another really strong defense. So you kind of have those built-in excuses, but that's not there this week. If you see another game where he's averaging, under 3 yards a carry, that's an issue. I don't think this Jets offense can be, as good as they want to be if they don't have, one of their best players on offense, Brees Hall, playing up to par.
So is Brees Hall still hampered by an injury? Because he was at some point, right? Is he still dealing with some sort of ailment?
So no, like he's not on the injury report. This off season, he was a full go. Like it's another year removed from the ACL injury. Like for whatever reason, it looks like something's been off. A lot of people are speculating that he's playing through something right now, but nothing's actually shown up on the injury report.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to find an explanation for the lack of production. I mean, even
thigh
considering
injury? Sorry to jump you. First State Jets is saying a quad or a thigh injury in camp.
Yeah, I mean, camp was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe that could be having an effect. Maybe it couldn't be. Maybe it's just a confidence thing, and it's a lot of conversations when you watch football and you talk about quarterbacks and their confidence and the way that that can affect them. I think you can also have a lot of conversations about a running back's ability to see the holes and their vision, how affected it gets by a lack of confidence, and maybe that's simply just what it is for Brees Hall. Maybe he's just not confident in the offensive line. Maybe he's not confident in the play calling or himself. And I think that might ultimately be what it's boiling down to. But I think he really needs a get right game to get that confidence back and get going.
Yeah, no, he definitely does against this defense in particular. And they're banged up right now. Like there's no denying it that, the Bills they lost a lot of key players on that defense, but they're also, if you look at their injury report, it's like a mile long of everyone that they're dealing with. And on the offensive side of the ball, there's no denying the talent that Josh Allen has. Through the first 3 weeks of the year, he looked like he was going to be a runaway MVP candidate, but they've really struggled the last 2 weeks. I think Allen had one of his worst games in his career against the Texans. Went down with the injury. I still don't know how he re-entered that game and got through concussion protocol, but he's going to play tonight. And I'm wondering what version of Josh Allen you're going to get. If the Jets can turn him over, which is something they've done a decent job with, at least in their home games against Josh Allen, then I think that they will have a chance tonight. But if this is, week 1 to 3, Josh Allen, where he's, running around making plays and they're putting up 30 points, I don't think the Jets can let this game get into a shootout. If it's going to be like a 30-27 game, like that's not something that I think is a strength for this team. But if it's a low scoring, grind it out, we're going to run the football and, play good defense, I think that kind of leans into the Jets' favor of what they would be trying to do.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, that's how I think this game is going to go. I think it's going to be defensive and kind of ugly. I don't think this is going to be any type of shootout. But then again, it's always hard to project that, right? Because when you have a team change the play calling duties over, it's really difficult for the opposing team to film study. It's really difficult for them to game plan. This could be a game where the Jets get off to a pretty hot start and they feel the spark and they light something on offense. And I would love to see that happen. But at the same time, from a defensive standpoint for the Jets, I think you need a big Will McDonald's game. I've been praising him every single week. And, I'm going to bring up this ridiculous 20-man fantasy league that I'm in once again. I'm going to set the stage for you here. I'm up by 4 points, exactly 4.0 points. My opponent has Garrett Wilson and I have Will McDonald. All I need is like 2 sacks and I think I'm good.
Yeah, I would think he's due for, a big game tonight. Like the Bills have a strong offensive line usually, but him being Will McDonald's clearly been the Jets' best pass rusher this year. No Hassan Reddick still, although we've had a change of agent and supposedly Drew Rosenhaus is like, we want to get this thing figured out. That was the news today. But clearly Hassan Reddick's not walking through the door and playing tonight. So yeah, Will McDonald is tied for, or was going into the week, tied for second in the league in sacks, had 6 sacks. And I think, again, if the Jets are to win, they're going to need McDonald in the backfield and getting pressure on Allen. If it's one of the weeks where the Jets aren't getting pressure, like against Denver or in week 1 against Brock Purdy and the 49ers, then I think they would be in for a long night.
Yeah, could be a long night. But one other thing, though, with Josh Allen, I want to get your opinion on this, and maybe I'm fishing for some info on a parlay that I'm trying to craft. But
Okay.
Rushing against the Jets, how Josh Allen is always a weapon with his legs. He's always a weapon to, take off and run for one. How have the Jets been against the quarterback run? Is that something that we have to look out for, the Josh Allen scramble tonight? Could that be something that bites the Jets?
Yes. Yeah, very, very much so. Josh Allen rushing. I'm more concerned, and this may come back to bite me later on, but I'm more concerned about Josh Allen tucking it and running than I am about Josh Allen dropping back to pass against this defense. I mentioned that they've done a good job of turning him over. The game up in Buffalo last year was horrendous. That was an absolute disaster game. But normally they've held him relatively in check, but it's the legs. He's done it a few times where he's tucked it and ran for like 30 yards against this defense.
Yeah, that helps me out here with what I'm trying to craft for my double up parlay tonight for sure. But I do think that, when you're looking at this Jets team, this defense, Josh Allen's potential to kill you with his legs, and I do wonder, could Hassan Reddick help with that? And I know you mentioned that obviously the new agent, I'm hoping that a deal gets done soon. And they mentioned that they want it to be a deal that keeps him with the Jets for the next several years. I know this isn't necessarily game preview, but I want to get a temperature check on where we are with Hassan Reddick and maybe even tie that into potential Devontae Adams conversation.
Yeah, I don't want to go long term with Hassan Reddick. The thought of a 3 or 4 year deal for this guy really scares me. My stance on it has always kind of been like the most I would do is add on an additional year to kind of keep him with this lined up Rodgers window. But anything more than that, I don't know how I'd feel about at his age, number one. And two, like clearly he's a guy based on this offseason, how he's very motivated on money. And if he doesn't have that, if he gets paid, like I'm wondering what kind of effort are we going to see from Hassan Reddick? And maybe that's unfair to the guy, but at the same time, like I don't know. He's missed 6 regular season games, or he will at this point miss 6 regular season games trying to get the contract done. What does he look like the rest of this year? Like, God forbid, what if he comes in and gets hurt because he's not in football shape, and then you have money on the books for next year too, or potentially, multiple years after this. I want him back because I think he makes the Jets a better football team. And when you're going up against the Josh Allen or Kansas City or Baltimore, if you're a playoff team this year, like you need guys like that to close out games. And I think something should get done. But again, I don't want to sign up for a 3 or 4 year Hassan Reddick deal.
I'm with you. I mean, I never wanted that. That was always my take. I was like, find a way to give him more incentives and get him on the field for this season at a pay raise, but nothing further than that. So maybe that's what the impasse is. Maybe that's been the roadblock between the Jets and Reddick. Maybe they just don't want him long term, and maybe that's all he wants. I think that's probably what it is, and we'll see how that shapes out over the next few weeks. But again, looking ahead to this Bills game, one thing that the Jets do have in a matchup advantage in my eyes is secondary versus Bills receiving core. That Bills offense is really struggling to find a consistent playmaker. But if they do have one in the receiving game, I guess it would be Dalton Kincaid. How are the Jets matching up with him tonight?
Yeah, I think this is a spot where they're going to need Quincy Williams, who's they're one of their best linebackers and really good sideline to sideline. He was really good in coverage last year in game number 1. That was like his coming out party, and it had a couple pass breakups in coverage and was just flying around. I think the last few weeks he's played at his All-Pro level like he did last year, and I think they're going to need that tonight. Unfortunately, with the tight ends, I just don't trust Chuck Clark or Tony Adams on them consistently enough. And with Michael Carter, the slot corner, out tonight, they're going to either have Isaiah Oliver or Brandon Eccles in the mix too. So they have an injury at the slot position, and we know that sometimes the Bills like to line up Kincaid in the slot. So I think it's going to be a lot's going to be put on Quincy Williams' plate tonight. I wouldn't even be opposed to, moving Sauce Gardner around and have him cover the tight end. They did that, in his rookie season on Mark Andrews in Baltimore, and it worked really well. That might be something that they have to do because one, like that's their best weapon in the passing attack. And then number 2, like DJ Reed has really held his own this year. He's been in my opinion, one of the top 3 to 5 corners in the NFL this year with his play. And I think he could handle going up against, the Bills' number 1 wideout if you're putting Sauce on Kincaid here.
Yeah, also a little off topic from the game preview, but on DJ Reed, just got to ask you from a Giants fan's perspective, what are the odds he shakes loose in the offseason?
I think pretty high. I love Reed and I would love to keep him. I just don't know that the Jets are going to be able to afford to keep him. I think he's going to get, I don't know, close to maybe $18 million a year on the open market. Someone will pay him to be a number 1 corner, I think. To me, he's clear in my eyes, even before this year, a top 15 corner in the league. The Jets have had a nice luxury here the last, 3 years, having a duo of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed as your outside corners. But I would love to keep him. I just think he's going to command big money, and I don't think the Jets could afford it, unfortunately.
18 to 20-ish million, that's about what the Giants will save if they cut Daniel Jones. I have to ask because, man, Alex on Fireside Giants, probably at least once a week, maybe twice a week at this point, we bring up different cornerbacks that the Giants could look at next year, and he's always like, I need DJ Reed in my life. And I'm like, I'm with you, brother. If we can get him over on the Giants, that'd be great. But
he wouldn't have to move very far.
Right. Maybe that would be the incentive. No moving fees, don't have to pay for a new apartment or anything.
No, I would hate to see him go. I think it's unfortunately trending that way. And just because it's a cap and money league, and he's 28 this year. So the thought of like paying a 28-year-old corner while you have to also pay Sauce and like everything else, like again, it just doesn't really make sense for the Jets timeline. But yeah, if you're in the need for a corner, I would say prioritize him on the open market. He's going to get a big bag, but I think he's worth it.
Yeah, next year's free agency cornerback class is actually really intriguing. He's the headliner, though, and we'll see if the Giants do get involved in that market.
Absolutely. So, all right, we're rounding towards the end of the show here. I think we got to go prediction time. I'm going to, maybe I might regret this, but I'm going to pick the Jets to win tonight. I think they get the first time, head coach boost, the interim head coach. I think it's the last 6 interim head coaches have won their first game. The Jets have not been better than the Buffalo Bills this year, but they desperately need this one. They can't afford to drop to 2-4. I'm in on Ulbrich and Todd Downing. It's a new era, baby. Jets win ugly 20-17 low scoring affair tonight.
That's insane that you said 20-17 because that was the exact same score that I had in my head. I just needed to decide, do I want to make it a Jets win or a Bills win? But I
Okay.
do 20-17 was the exact same number that I was about to say. It's crazy enough. I was going to go one of two ways with this. I'll just give you both predictions. I'm going to give you the realistic prediction, which is the Bills probably win 20-17 would be my bet. But my optimistic prediction is that Breece Hall rips a 40-yard game-winning touchdown run to win 20-17 for the Jets. So pick your poison, whichever one you like better. That's the one that's going to happen.
I like that. All right, let's go on the positive. I need some positive mojo today. I got all three of my team. I'm a Jets, Islanders, Mets fan. All three of my teams play today. I would like Islanders is third game of the year. If they lose, I'll get over it. But Jets and Mets, I need them to find a way to win. I don't want to be depressed at midnight tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, those LA Dodgers had some fun. We'll see how tonight's game goes, though. And yeah, I like that little gym parlay that you posted. That was pretty good stuff.
Yeah, there we go. So we got the parlay cooking over on BetUS. So sign up with YouTube 150, get 150% match deposit bonus. All right, that's gonna do it for us on this one. We'll be back on Thursday with some reaction to Jets Bills, previewing Jets Steelers Sunday Night Football, and then obviously previewing the Giants Eagles matchup as well. Make sure to tune in to Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants. If you're a Giants fan, Jets, you can find me on Talking Jets or Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony. We'll catch you next time.